I never thought I'd be the kind of man who kept a ledger on family debts. But here I am, staring at a note on my phone with a number that makes my stomach turn, $24,750. That's how much I've loaned to my wife's family over the past 6 years. Not a single cent has been repaid. Not once. But let's back up. My name is Ethan, I'm 36, and I run a small but successful construction business. I started with nothing, just a rusted-out truck and a willingness to work until my hands bled. I met my wife Julia when I was still struggling, and she supported me through the tough years. She's a teacher, a kind woman who always believes in the best in people. Maybe that's why she never saw the truth about her family. Or maybe she just didn't want to. Her mother Helen has always had a way of making every problem someone else's responsibility. And her older sister Vanessa took that trait and turned it into an art form. From the moment I married Julia, Vanessa saw me as one thing, an ATM with a pulse. At first it was small things. $100 here, $200 there. Always for emergencies. A burst pipe, a car repair, school supplies for her kids. The promises to pay me back came easily, rolling off her tongue like second nature. But the money never came back. And each time Julia would tell me, that's just how Vanessa is. Family helps family. I let it slide. Because I loved my wife. Because I wanted to be a good husband. Because I convinced myself it wasn't a big deal. But it never stopped. The emergencies got bigger. The asks bolder. A $3,500 loan when Vanessa's husband lost his job, only for them to turn around and post vacation photos from the Bahamas a month later. A $5,000 crisis when their mortgage was behind, except the money went toward a new patio set. I started keeping track. Not out of spite, but because I needed to see the truth in black and white. I needed proof that I wasn't crazy. That they were using me. I tried to talk to Julia about it. She looked uncomfortable, twisting her wedding ring the way she always did when she wanted to avoid conflict. It's just money, she said. We're doing okay, right? We were. But that wasn't the point. The last straw came last Saturday at Helen's house. A normal family dinner, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, the usual. I was halfway through my plate when Vanessa, with that too sweet smile of hers, leaned in. I found the perfect deal on a family vacation, she said, all casual-like. Jamaica. Beautiful resort, all-inclusive. Only $3,200 per couple. I wasn't paying attention until she added, "So Ethan, when can you send the money?" I froze. The whole table was watching me. Waiting. Expecting. That's when I knew. This wasn't just about money. This was about control. And I was done. The silence stretched so long I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Vanessa was still smiling, that saccharine, smug expression that told me she already thought she'd won. My mother-in-law, Helen, sat primly at the head of the table, her hands folded like a queen awaiting tribute. Julia was staring down at her plate, pretending she wasn't part of this conversation. I set my fork down carefully. "I'm sorry, what?" Vanessa let out a little laugh, shaking her head like I was being deliberately slow. "The vacation. We already booked the rooms, Ethan. We just need you to send your part so we can confirm it." "Wait," I said, leaning back. "You booked it already?" "Well, yeah," she said like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "I mean, we knew you'd say yes. You always help family." The audacity of it hit me like a slap. They hadn't even asked. They just assumed I'd roll over and open my wallet like always. I looked at Julia. She was still avoiding my gaze, pushing her peas around her plate. That told me everything I needed to know. She knew. Maybe not the details, but enough to know what was coming. And she hadn't warned me. I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to stay calm. "No." Vanessa blinked. "What?" "No," I said again, firmer this time. "I'm not paying for your vacation." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Helen let out a small gasp, like I'd just announced I was divorcing Julia right there at the dinner table. Vanessa's mouth twitched in disbelief, then anger. "What do you mean no?" she snapped. "I mean," I said, pushing my chair back, "that I was never asked. I was never consulted. And I'm sure as hell not paying for something I had no say in." Vanessa turned to Julia. "Tell him. Tell him he's being ridiculous." Julia finally looked up, her expression pinched with discomfort. "Maybe we should talk about this later," she murmured. "Later?" Vanessa repeated, incredulous. "The deposit is due next week, Julia. The kids already know we're going." You can't let him back out now. She turned to me, her voice sharpening. A real man provides for his family without complaining, Ethan. You're doing well, right? You always talk about how great your business is. What's a few thousand to you? And there it was. The unspoken rule. The assumption that because I had worked my ass off to build something, they were entitled to reap the benefits. I clenched my jaw. Vanessa, do you even remember how much money you've borrowed from me over the years? She waved a dismissive hand. Oh, please. That's different. That's what family does. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to my notes, and started reading. March 2021, $2,500 for your emergency car repairs. I glanced up. Yet somehow, a week later, you posted pictures from a spa retreat. Vanessa paled. That was July 2022, $4,800 for your mortgage payment. I met her eyes. But then Carl got a brand new gaming setup the same month. Helen gasped. Julia's grip on her fork tightened. Vanessa's face darkened, her hands curling into fists. Stop, she hissed. No, I said, standing now. I'm done. I'm done being the family bank. You want a vacation? Pay for it yourself. And while we're at it, you have 90 days to start repaying what you owe me, or I'm taking this to small claims court. The table erupted. Helen started crying. Vanessa shot up, her chair scraping against the floor as she screamed at me. Julia whispered my name, a plea in her voice. But I was done listening. I grabbed my coat. We're leaving, I told Julia. The drive home was silent. My phone vibrated in my pocket, text after text, notification after notification. Vanessa was already spinning the story, playing the victim, turning the family against me. Julia finally spoke when we pulled into the driveway. They're going to make this horrible, she whispered. I stared straight ahead. They already have. The next morning, my phone was already vibrating before I even got out of bed. Missed calls, texts, voicemails. The family group chat was lighting up like a Christmas tree, my name dragged through the mud in real time. I sat up and rubbed my face, already exhausted. Julia was next to me, scrolling through her own phone, her expression tight with anxiety. What are they saying? I asked, even though I already knew. She exhaled sharply. Vanessa's making it sound like you just snapped out of nowhere. That you humiliated her in front of the family for no reason. I let out a bitter laugh. Of course she is. She's also implying that you control all our money. That made me pause. What? Julia turned her screen toward me. It was a screenshot of a private group chat, one I wasn't in. Vanessa's message was right at the top. Honestly, I've been worried about Julia for a while. Ethan controls everything. She can't even buy coffee without asking him first. That's not normal. That's financial abuse. I stared at the words, my stomach turning. This was low. Even for Vanessa. Are you kidding me? I muttered. Julia sighed, rubbing her temple. I mean, you and I know that's complete BS. We have separate accounts, shared accounts. I buy what I want. But she's twisting it, making it sound like you keep me on an allowance or something. I grabbed my own phone and scrolled through my messages. The unread count had jumped past 30. Family members I barely talked to were suddenly reaching out. Hey man, is everything okay between you and Julia? Heard some concerning things. You know we're here for you, Julia. Abuse is serious, Ethan. Just saying. I clenched my jaw. This wasn't just drama anymore. Vanessa was planting the idea that I was some kind of controlling monster. And people were buying it. Julia must have sensed my tension because she touched my arm. Ignore them, she said softly. I shook my head. No. I know Vanessa. She's not just stirring the pot, she's setting the stage. She wants to isolate me. Make me the villain. Julia's fingers tightened around mine. Then we stopped playing her game. I took a deep breath. We need proof. She nodded. Then, without another word, she pulled up her banking app. Transactions loaded on the screen, grocery runs, coffee orders, online shopping. All of it done without asking me for a dime. She took screenshots and sent them straight into the family group chat. Her message was simple. Not sure where Vanessa got her information, but I spend my own money, no permission needed. Within seconds the chat exploded. Some relatives immediately backtracked, scrambling to act like they never believed Vanessa in the first place. Others doubled down, claiming I must have made Julia post that. And then there was Vanessa. Her response came in fast, full of righteous fury. "Oh honey, you really believe you have control over your own money? That's how it starts. He's obviously making you say this." Julia actually laughed. "She's delusional." Then came the final blow. "We're having a family meeting tonight. No excuses." Julia looked at me. "Do we even bother going?" I didn't hesitate. "Absolutely. Never let someone else control the narrative." Tonight, Vanessa would try to turn the family against me. But I was ready. The moment we stepped into Julia's parents' house that evening, I knew exactly how this was going to go. The air was thick with tension, the kind that told me everyone had already picked a side. Vanessa was standing near the kitchen, arms crossed, a smug little smirk tugging at her lips. She had been waiting for this moment, waiting to make a spectacle of me. Julia squeezed my hand before we walked in fully, and I took that as my cue to stay calm. I wasn't here to lose my temper. I was here to make sure Vanessa didn't get away with rewriting history. Everyone was gathered in the living room. Her parents, her younger brother Ryan, her Aunt Margaret, even a couple of cousins who had no business being here. The whole damn tribunal. Julia's mother, Helen, was the first to speak. "Ethan, we need to talk about the way you've been treating this family." I let out a breath through my nose. Funny, I was thinking the same thing. Vanessa scoffed. "Oh, here we go. He's going to act like the victim now." I ignored her. "I'd love to know why I woke up this morning to messages from extended family members implying that I'm financially abusing my wife." Helen shifted uncomfortably, as if she wasn't expecting me to get straight to the point. "We're just concerned, sweetheart," she told Julia in that syrupy voice of hers. "Vanessa told us some things that, well, they don't sound like the marriage we hoped you'd have." Vanessa immediately latched onto that. "Exactly. We just want to make sure you're safe, Julia. Controlling finances is one of the first signs of an abusive relationship." Julia actually rolled her eyes. "Are you serious?" "Vanessa, we have separate accounts. Shared accounts. I spend my own money whenever I want. How exactly is that financial abuse?" Vanessa let out a laugh that was all show. "Oh honey, I know you think that. But abusers make you feel like you have freedom when really they control everything behind the scenes." I clenched my jaw, but Julia wasn't having it. She pulled out her phone again, holding it up for the room to see. "Here," she said, scrolling through transactions. Target runs. Coffee shops. Online shopping. All bought with my own money. No permission from Ethan. No control. Just me living my life. The room was silent. Then, slowly, Julia turned to Helen. "Mom, do you really think I'd let someone control me like that?" Helen hesitated. "Well, that was all Vanessa needed." "It's okay, Julia," she crooned. "You don't have to defend him. We're family. We'll support you no matter what." I laughed, shaking my head. "That's rich coming from you. If family mattered so much, why is it that you've never once paid back the money you owe me?" Vanessa froze. Her expression twisted into something uglier than before. Helen stiffened. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out my own phone, scrolling to my notes app. Let's talk numbers. November 2021. Vanessa needed $1,500 to cover an emergency car repair. January 2022, $3,000 for rent when her landlord was threatening eviction. April 2022, $2,000 for some urgent medical bills. But weirdly, that's the same month she posted about her vacation to the Bahamas. Helen turned to Vanessa, eyes wide. "Vanessa, is this true?" Vanessa's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Ryan, who had been quiet the entire time, let out a low whistle. "Damn, Vanessa. That's over $6,000. The room was unraveling and I wasn't done. "You've borrowed money from me, from Julia, from God knows how many other family members. And not a single cent has been paid back." I locked eyes with her. "So tell me, Vanessa, how exactly am I the bad guy here?" The mask finally cracked. Vanessa's face twisted in anger. "That's different. We're family. You don't count that kind of stuff." I nodded slowly. "So let me get this straight. You can guilt trip me into covering your emergencies, but the moment I say no, I'm a monster? That's real convenient." The room exploded. Helen was demanding explanations. Ryan was shaking his head in disgust. Julia's Aunt Margaret started muttering about how she always knew Vanessa was shady. And Vanessa? She was flailing. Her last, desperate attempt at control. "You know what?" she finally snapped, pointing a finger at Julia. "You've changed. He's changed you. You used to be on my side." Julia crossed her arms. "I was never on your side. I was just afraid to call you out." Vanessa looked like she'd been slapped. For the first time, I saw something in her eyes that I'd never seen before. Panic. Because she realized she wasn't in control anymore. And that was just the beginning of her downfall. Vanessa stormed out of the room, her heels clicking violently against the hardwood floor. The front door slammed behind her, rattling the picture frames on the walls. Silence settled over the room like a thick fog, heavy with the weight of everything that had just been exposed. Helen sat stiffly on the couch, her hands clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles had turned white. She wasn't looking at anyone, just staring at the floor, processing. Ryan had his arms crossed, shaking his head in something between amusement and disgust. Julia stood beside me, her breathing steady but sharp, as if she was keeping herself from saying something she might regret. Margaret, Julia's aunt, was the first to break the silence. "Well," she sighed, sipping from a wine glass she had mysteriously acquired during the chaos. "That was a damn mess." Helen shot her a look, but Margaret just shrugged. "Oh, don't give me that face, Helen. You know Vanessa's been like this for years. You've just been ignoring it." Helen finally looked up, eyes narrowing. "That's not true." "Oh, it's very true," Margaret countered, swirling the wine in her glass. "You've bailed her out how many times now? And not once has she changed." Helen's lips pressed into a thin line. I could see it, the slow realization creeping in, the part of her that wanted to defend Vanessa fighting against the undeniable truth. Ryan let out a low chuckle. "Man, I can't believe she really tried to spin it like Ethan was the bad guy. That was next-level delusional." Julia sighed, rubbing her temples. "I shouldn't even be surprised. She's always been like this. Always twisting things so she comes out looking like the victim." Helen exhaled sharply. "She's my daughter," she said, as if that somehow justified everything. Julia's jaw tightened. "And I'm your daughter too. Or does that only matter when I'm agreeing with you?" That landed. Helen flinched, looking at Julia with something dangerously close to guilt. "You know that's not true." "Do I?" Julia's voice was quiet but firm. "Because I feel like every time Vanessa pulls something, we all just excuse it. We let it slide. And when I stopped doing that, when Ethan stopped doing that, suddenly we were the problem." Margaret took another sip of wine. Finally, someone says it out loud. Helen rubbed her temples. This is a lot. I need time to process." I sighed. "Take all the time you need, Helen. But just so we're clear, Julia and I aren't going to be the scapegoats for this family anymore." Helen looked up at me, her expression unreadable. Ryan snorted. "Honestly? Good for you." Julia looked at her mother one last time, waiting, hoping, for something. An acknowledgement. An apology. But Helen said nothing. And that silence? It told us everything we needed to know. The fallout started the very next morning. I woke up to find my phone buzzing nonstop on the nightstand. Julia was already up, sitting at the edge of the bed, scrolling through her phone with a look that was somewhere between exasperation and fury. "What's going on?" I muttered, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. She turned her screen toward me, and there it was, Vanessa's latest masterpiece. A long, dramatic Facebook post, complete with vague accusations and carefully chosen wording to make herself look like the helpless victim. It's heartbreaking when family turns their back on you. When the people who are supposed to support you choose greed over love. I never thought my own sister and her husband would be so cruel, but I guess money changes people. Some of us still believe in family. Some of us still believe in loyalty. But I guess I was wrong. Hundreds of comments. Some from extended family, some from old high school friends, all offering their sympathy. "Stay strong, Vanessa. I can't believe they would do this to you. I always knew Julia was stuck up, but this is a new low." I groaned, rubbing my temples. "Of course she's playing the victim." Julia scoffed. "It gets worse. Check your messages." I opened my texts and immediately regretted it. A flood of messages from distant relatives, some furious, some passive-aggressive. "Aunt Linda, I don't know what's going on, but if you and Julia needed money, you could have just asked. No need to turn on family like this." Uncle David, wow. Didn't think you'd be the type to put money over blood. Cousin Stephanie, just wanted to let you know that Vanessa is really upset. Maybe you should apologize before things get worse. Apologize? I let out a bitter laugh. They really think we're the problem here? Julia clenched her jaw. Vanessa's a master manipulator. She knows exactly how to spin things to make herself look like the victim. And everyone just eats it up. I sighed, tossing my phone onto the bed. We should have seen this coming. Oh, I did. Julia stood up, pacing the room. I just didn't think she'd move this fast. A part of me wanted to ignore it, let Vanessa spin whatever lies she wanted. But another part of me, the part that had spent years watching Julia's family take advantage of her, was done staying silent. I grabbed my phone again, my mind already forming a plan. If she wants a war, I said, locking eyes with Julia, she's about to get one. Julia crossed her arms, nodding. Good. Because I'm done letting her rewrite the story. This time we weren't going to just take it. This time we were fighting back. I wasn't about to let Vanessa control the narrative. If she wanted to play the victim, then it was time for people to see the full picture. Julia and I spent the morning gathering everything. Text messages, bank statements, even old Facebook posts where Vanessa had bragged about expensive spa days and luxury purchases right after claiming she was barely scraping by. By noon, I had compiled a full timeline of every time she had borrowed money and every time she had conveniently forgotten to pay it back. Julia, ever the meticulous one, created a spreadsheet detailing every transfer, every excuse Vanessa had made, and what the money had actually gone toward. Do we just dump it all online? I asked, staring at the document. Julia hesitated. We could, but that makes us look just as petty as she is. No, we need to be smarter. That's when she had an idea. Instead of confronting Vanessa directly, she sent the receipts, quietly, privately, to key family members. Aunt Linda, Uncle David, Cousin Stephanie. The same people who had been in the Facebook comments defending Vanessa. She didn't add any angry explanations, just a simple message. I know you've heard Vanessa's version of events. I thought you should see the full picture. Then we waited. At first, silence. But by evening the fallout had begun. Julia's phone buzzed with a message from Aunt Linda. I had no idea. She told me you guys were living in luxury while she and Mark were struggling. But she's been taking thousands from you? Then another from Uncle David. So she bought designer bags with your money? And then had the audacity to call you greedy? Unreal. Even Cousin Stephanie, one of Vanessa's biggest defenders, sent a hesitant, I feel stupid for believing her. The real kicker came when Julia's mom Margaret called. I could hear the exhaustion in her voice. I don't even know what to say, she admitted. Vanessa's been calling me all day, furious. She says you're turning the family against her. Julia sighed. Mom, we didn't turn anyone against her. She did that herself. Margaret was quiet for a long moment. She's my daughter, but even I can't defend this. And just like that, Vanessa's carefully crafted narrative began to crumble. By the time we checked Facebook again that night, her dramatic post had fewer supportive comments and more uncomfortable questions. Wait, didn't you just post about your new car last month? Didn't Julia and Alex pay for your son's summer camp last year? Vanessa, clearly realizing the tide was turning, deleted the post. I turned to Julia with a smirk. Guess the truth wasn't as convenient as she thought. Julia let out a breath, looking both relieved and exhausted. She's not going to let this go, you know? I nodded. I know. But at least now neither will we.